poll question that we're going to put out for this roundtable that we're doing. This is moving from POC into production, so we got a poll question. We're going to have a quick commercial from Infosys, and then I'm going to introduce the panel. One of the things I'll just say is we're going to be quite candid in the discussion. We'll leave some time towards the end for some Q&A. We really would like you to ask questions and really try to engage some of the panelists on some of the issues that you're dealing with. So this should be really interesting. And let me start the Infosys commercial. Oh, the poll question we have coming up. We're going to pop that, but while people are actually putting in their response, let's do a quick intro. And Sumit, give us your background, what you're doing for your organization today, and then really where your focus is, and then we'll get into some of the questions.
Yeah, so my responsibility within Verizon is network systems, and what we do in network systems. By the way, how many of you are from OSS? How many of you support in some way or the other building of the network? I see some Verizon guys and some folks from support Verizon. Okay, good. So really, our responsibility is to make sure that we provide systems to our network users who use systems to deploy in the right place, make sure that they are able to provision services, and then ultimately maintain the most reliable network. And GenAI, we look for opportunities like this, right? Because it plays in all of them. It allows our engineers to be more efficient, our networks to be more reliable. So it plays in all of them. So we are constantly looking for opportunities like this, technologies like this, that how can we keep pushing the boundary?
Yeah, excellent, Sumit. And you're hardcore. I mean, you're 20 plus years in the network provisioning and just...
That's kind of giving away. Yes, I've been with Verizon for 24 years and love it.
Yeah, excellent. And Julian, you're kind of a newcomer to the space, so you're kind of looking at it from a different lens coming into telco. But give us your background and what you're doing for Anthropic.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I think, Sumit, you've been at Verizon 20 years longer than Anthropic has existed, so we're definitely the newer kids on the block. But my name is Julian Williams. I lead the telecommunications vertical at Anthropic, and I'm focused on a lot of our core partnerships. So this comes with working directly with our largest clients to actually help them get use cases into production. It also includes working with our ISVs on certain strategic bets so that it makes it easier for our clients to adopt pod models, and then also working really closely with our hyperscaler partners, AWS and GCP, to make sure that you can access pod models in your preferred infrastructure.
Yeah, excellent. And Anand, you're putting together all the pieces. So you're really trying to not only deploy the technology, but deal with, we heard about people and processes and everything. Give us your background.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We were chatting. You've got a user and a builder. You've got a creator. So we are the tech integrator making all this work. I've been in the firm 30 years at Infosys. I lead strategy, specifically into the CMT sector, communication, media, high-tech sector. And one of the strategic elements we are leading with is AI, use of AI internally within Infosys, but also helping our customers and our partners in the use and the scaling of AI. Particularly, my interest is in the scale and adoption part of it.
Okay, yeah. Let's, before we get into the use cases, let's just take a look at the audience response that was up earlier. I don't know if we can pop that again on where people believe GenAI offers the greatest potential. So customer care really showing up at the top of the list, 47%. And then we got network troubleshooting, 23, network automation, and bill clarification. So some of that may be just a mix of the audience, but I think it's somewhat aligned with what we heard with some of the earlier speakers. So let me start with you. Maybe you can give us a sense for at Verizon where you see the opportunity for using generative AI and technology and some of the use cases that you're looking to move from proof of concept out into the production environment.
Yeah, and I am going to focus on the second and the third. Is given in network systems, and I feel I can get into much more detail there. So when you look at it from the network perspective, there are 3 use cases which we are in the process of kind of deploying right now, and there are several more in the evaluation. The first use case is all about content generation, knowledge management, content summarization. This is, think about all the vendor documentation that we have. We have 40,000 plus landlords. How do we maintain all their leases? These leases are pretty complex. Some of them still require us to, regulatory still requires us to have paper documentation as well. So in the past, we used to take this, OCR it, try to extract some information. Now we can not just extract all the information using our large language models, but you can drive a lot of automation from it. So those are some very simple use cases that is already, we have gone through it. It's already productionalized. Then right on the heels, which is not just applicable for us, but is from every technology company, software organization, is how do you really, your software development lifecycle, how do you manage it end to end? And I'm not just talking about using Copilot or Codium just to write code, but you're talking all the way to the left, right? So we used to have we used to follow SAFe methodology where you have PMs, POs, you're writing user stories, features. We have really taken it to the left. So our requirements are now prompts, right? So that's the world that we live in. You take the requirement, you have a knowledge graph which kind of takes the requirement and breaks it down into what features are you looking for, all the way down to the user stories. You still have a few technical people and some certifications to do it, but this piece is pretty mature at this point of time, and it's giving us really good results. And the third use case I will talk about is general. And if you think about it, the biggest fear for a technology like GenAI, when you go to our users, is they're going to say that, hey, you're taking my job away, get out of here, come back tomorrow, I don't have time for you. It's all kinds of things, right? So how do you help them understand that, hey, this is really a tool to enhance your productivity? So there's tons of use cases and the varying kinds of implementation, but a Copilot, which is not just writing code Copilot, but a Copilot use case where it's helping the users improve their productivity. That one has a long way to go. We have already deployed in pieces, which are recommending, but you will see more technologies and more software coming out to help in there. Beyond that, troubleshooting, and we're already making some inroads in there, and there are some exploratory work that the team is doing. But those are some really good uses within the network. And Kamran in the morning talked about everything that we are doing in the customer care and others as well.
Yeah, so we'll come back to you, Sumit, but I do want to talk about how you measure value. And then also for these use cases, how do you measure success versus, hey, it's not working as we anticipated. The session this morning by AT&T was quality of the output that you get. But we'll come back to that. Julian, give us your take. I mean, you're a foundation model supplier to the industry. What are the top 3 use cases that you're seeing in the telco market?
Yeah, I'll actually break it down into 3 different buckets. I think there are more general productivity use cases, which might be an N of 1. They don't necessarily scale, and so you are a a salesperson that wants help coming up with objection handling feedback, or you are a lawyer that wants help summarizing an individual brief. And so there are more broad-based technologies like Claude for Enterprise or other, co-pilot or co-agent products that help solve individual one-off use cases, which is people glean a lot of value from. I think when we shift from those products into more of the API world, it falls into productivity gains or cost reduction, which is definitely where customer care falls, or it falls into revenue generation. And I think with telcos, a lot of the focus today that I've seen has been in customer care and cost reduction.
Mm-hmm.
So this can be so many things related to call agent support. It's everything from simple retrieval with grounding of answers, so you can just get answers really fast and resolve calls faster, to automatically feeding in transcripts and then providing call agents recommendations, let's say on what offers to provide, or actually taking some of the follow-up work away. So taking the call transcript, dynamically generating the email, and then turning your call center agents from folks that need to write everything out by hand to editors. So again, just saving folks time and making your customers happy. And then you also just have fully automated solutions like Nagra is building a billing resolution agent on top of Claude and AWS Bedrock to actually make sure some of those calls don't get through, and you can just make the customers happy faster. So there's a lot of work being done there. And then on the revenue generation side, I think it's really interesting, and there's a lot of opportunity. When I look at not exactly a telco, but or not a telco at all. When I look at Asana, they've recently rolled out Asana AI, which is powered by Claude. And so being able to take their core product and then offer an add-on that they can charge more and generate a new revenue stream is really interesting. That's a direct revenue generation. And then there's also more implicit revenue generation, such as feeding all of your call transcripts into something like Claude, seeing what the best call agents are doing, and then rolling out those best practices across your entire org to generate more revenue. So there's so many different buckets, but a lot of it is, I would say, really centered on that cost reduction or efficiency improvement today.
Okay, so right now the bias is more for productivity enhancement, although you're seeing some green shoots, if you will, around revenue generation, which would be things like personalized marketing and things of that nature.
100%.
Yeah. You have any comments? Not like on just the practical implementation, and I mean we've got some examples that are low-hanging fruit, but then when you get into Sumit's area, the problems get much more difficult.
Exactly.
And so
exactly, I was seeing the poll, and I think there's about 12 to 14% of the 50 people who polled said solving billing inquiries. And actually, that's a nice low-hanging fruit. I think on average, a telco gets, if I remember, about 7 to 10% are billing complaints, of which just plain billing inquiries are about 4 to 5%. And when you take somebody like Verizon, 120 million calls in a year, 4 to 5% of that, if that's just billing inquiries, if that can be solved, that's just calls that's gone away. So the way I look at it if I answer your question on use cases and how we think about it, you apply the desirability, feasibility, viability lens. Everything is desirable. You could apply this tech on any area and you can get some value. But that question on ROI, if I may answer that, what you were going to ask, is what's the real business value out of this? And there was this, Sumit and me were chatting earlier. A typical AI product, if we need to set it up, 5 to 6 months to build it up and get it to scale, couple of pods of team members working on it. And then you need hardware, infrastructure, compute, GPUs, and some amount of software. So put together, an average cost of an AI product is about $6 million bucks. If you're going to ask for a capital of $6 million, we need to justify a 3 to 4x rate of return over 3 years. So I need to find about a 20 million savings through productivity, efficiency, whatever. A 20 million, and if I think AI would help a benefit impact of about 50% in an area, I need to find a problem area which today costs me $40 to $50 million. And to me, that's the Goldilocks zone. AI-worthy problems is about a 50 million problem. If I can find 50 million cost, I can then hope to take 20 million of that, generate a rate of return, which then allows me to go spend $6 million. So that's how we tend to do an ROI. Otherwise, we'll end up applying it everywhere, and the production scale cost just goes up way too high, and that's the industry is not ready for yet.
Yeah. I'll come back to you. So just on the case around building a business case and ROI, how does Verizon, how do you think about some of the use cases and making a credible case for why we should do this investment?
Yeah.
And, just to follow on to that, what are the markers for success? And then once you measure those markers, when you decide to either, hey, we're going to cut it, it's not successful, or we're going to push this out on a wider basis.
Yeah, so I think one of the things, and building upon what Kamran shared this morning, when he said that, hey, we educated all our senior leaders, he really meant it. Okay, it wasn't just a PowerPoint presentation. We really started the journey with everybody kind of bringing the knowledge at the same base and say, hey, these are the opportunities that are shaping up. Here's where the world is moving. Go look in your own areas. What are the different opportunities that everybody has? And coming out of that exercise, at the same time, we also formed a Center of Excellence team, under our AI&D team, which is kind of providing the overall Center of Excellence, kind of a toll gate. Like, okay, is this, so before we start working and implementing a use case, we have a toll gate that we go through, which looks at the ROI, which looks at the technical feasibility, what kind of technology you should be implementing. Is this how is it a prompt, RAG? Do you need to do a knowledge graph? So all of those kind of things that we cover during those meetings, and then you kind of go from then say, okay, we approve these are the use cases that we are approving to move forward. So I do think at least in the initial phases, especially because there's a direct cost to the implementation, some kind of having a toll gate is a good practice to have. So that's how we are kind of doing that filtering upfront.
Yeah, one of the issues that we hear as a market research firm, and this is, I think you sort of go through this hype phase, and then you have sort of a reality check, is it's hard to measure the value of some of these solutions. So you're kind of building out the infrastructure, but the applications really aren't there yet. How do you think about the use of the technology and the tools and access to the data? I mean, there's the whole people process, but how do you get your arms around this is viable technology that we can use? And give us a sense for how the whole ecosystem works. We've got an integrator here. You've obviously got a supplier. Like, how does that work in your environment?
Yeah, we can't start anything without the foundation models. That's the ultimate. Look, I think this is where, and I will step back and say that GenAI is really very different, right? We are making the whole shift. It's a pivot from what our software and computers used to do differently before, right? We were very deterministic. Software, the thing was about repeatability. You ask something, you get a definitive answer back. And now we are becoming probabilistic, right? So the software is trying to mimic the human gut instinct into its approach and methodology. So it comes with a few challenges when you do that, right? First of all, you have to make sure, and I saw in the AT&T keynote speaker as well, and I mentioned about accuracy. Accuracy is a big deal. I mean, like anybody can implement a hello world in this area, right? Very easy to do, but how do you create an enterprise application where you can ensure that there is a good, like humans' gut instinct, but everybody's gut instinct is right, So how do you make sure that you have the best mind, like tune? So I think this is where, you have to start with, this philosophy of a people, process, and technology, starting with technology first. When you look at the technology, every day, this is a nascent area, and things are changing. Constantly there are new models being added, new ways of new vector databases, new ways of creating graph. So we have to kind of pick what is needed for organization, stick to it, go through it. So the proliferation of technology, you do have to lock it down. One of the best practice that we have done, which I really like it, is we have a wrapper on top of all the foundation models, which allows us to be agnostic, doesn't allow vendor lock-in, and allows us to be agnostic, so behind the scene, we could be, all the individual implementation just calls that in that wrapper. And then behind the scene, it maintains all the different models that we'll go to. It can also decide whether you're going on-prem or you're going to a cloud and paying by the call. So all of those things is being maintained from there.
Yeah.
Can I actually chime in on
Yeah,
that?
go ahead, Julian.
One of the things that you said that really stood out to me was just the pace of change in the industry. You mentioned that there's new embedding models coming out. Obviously, the foundation models have a very high velocity right now. And so I think when we're thinking of shipping from POC to production, actually having a really well fleshed out evaluation framework in place is absolutely essential. I think it's really important to have a clear criteria of what you need to move to production, and that can include the accuracy benchmarks, the latency, the ROI modeling, also any red teaming tests that you're doing, how easy is it to jailbreak a model, especially if it's external facing. And so having that in place is really key just to get it to production initially. But then because the models are evolving so quickly, you need a fast way to reevaluate them. And so a lot of folks are still relying on subject matter experts and human feedback on a 1 to 5 scale and having that be their benchmark to move to production. But I'm seeing more and more folks shift to automated evaluations where they're having a smarter model like 3.5 Sonnet evaluate the output of a smaller model like Haiku, and then just making that faster. Because I don't know, I look at Anthropic's model suite, and we released Opus in March, and it was the smartest model in the world at the time. And then 3 months later, we released 3.5 Sonnet, and it was smarter than Opus, twice as fast, and a fifth of the cost. And so you don't want to have this really long evaluation process so that you're locked into Opus for a while when you could be getting efficiency and intelligence gains if you were just able to make that transition to a new model faster.
Yeah. One of the things that sort of struck me on the keynote session was the accuracy comment. Like if it's 50%, it's a fail, but you have to sort of like strive for that 95% accuracy rating. And there's different techniques that are being used. There's some conversation that Mark was talking about earlier around using RAG. Obviously, in the telco domain, you've got domain experts, so the human still stays in the chain to actually improve the outcomes. And then you got agentic workflows. What do you? I guess I'll start with you, Julian. What do you see state of the industry right now in terms of shooting for those high quality, better outcomes to get from moving from proof of concept into production? Yeah,
I mean, accuracy is typically the number one thing folks are looking at, is, as you mentioned, and search and retrieval, RAG is really key to that. This is actually a very timely question because Anthropic just released a paper on contextual retrieval. When you think of RAG generally, you're taking all of these long documents and you're breaking them into chunks, and then you're encoding them into an embeddings model so that you can retrieve them later, and essentially inputting that into the prompt. The downside of this is you potentially destroy a lot of the context that was originally present in the documents, and so it can basically decrease your ability to accurately retrieve the information you're looking for, which is the whole point of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And with contextual retrieval, what you do is you take those documents, you break them into chunks, but then you have a small model like Haiku, or pick your favorite model, write a description of what the chunk is, and then you prepend it, and then you embed all of that. And you combine that with re-ranking, where you look for the best examples, and then you can just dramatically increase your success rate in terms of the accuracy of retrieval. And the way I think of retrieval in general is these models are getting smarter and smarter, and you can get to the point where a model is a PhD in biology, but it's still not going to remember what's on page 5 of its biology textbook. And so you need to ground it in that real information. And so these methods like contextual retrieval that are improving the ability to reference those external information sources are going to be really important for accuracy.
Yeah. And I'll pull you into the conversation more around what you're seeing as best practices. So for folks in the audience that are on this journey, what works in terms of people, process, and use of the technology that's a best practice?
I'll give a practical example of something we did with RAG and what our learnings through that was. This is something we used internally. And So there's about maybe 2,000 salespeople in the firm, in the company, and at any point of time, 500 to 600 odd people are responding to RFQs, typical in the system integrator world, quite common in the telco world also, where there's quite a lot of RFPs you're responding to. So the idea was 500 to 600 people spending a lot of time responding to these same questions. Now we have responded to these in the past. Previous RFPs, RFQs, we have responded to. So I have a corpus of responses. Can I use that and create a proposal GPT or something which allows me to automatically next RFQ respond to a lot of these questions? Because I have those informations. So remove the work of these 500 people who do this. So that was the idea, seemed very desirable, seemed like a good one to do. The challenges was, first, you need to get the right amount of good proposals in there. And they go out of date after a year because your information has changed. Some of the factual information has changed. So, but that's what we started with. Then the accuracy, the point of, is it able to accurately create nice responses? Because eventually these are going to end customers. Our RFQ responses are going to end customers. So is there a good accuracy in there? Very soon we hit 40 to 50% accuracy. But after that, it plateaued off in terms of the accurate information and effective information. So that was the second challenge. And then you're constantly feeding and training. So it's either the model issue or the new data issue. So kind of dealt with that. But the third problem is user adoption. You want now these 400 or 500 people to start using these and leverage these to write RFPs. And my original thought was people are going to use it because it's who wants to write stuff. So people are going to use this anyway. It was the best time on a panel to get a call, even after you turned to silent. Sorry about that. So, so we offered it to people and said, hey, you have this new tool which will automatically write these proposals for you and go ahead and use it. But what we didn't realize is and we are the best cynics in the world, the end users. The first time I don't get a right answer, you're not going to revisit the tool for the next 40, 50 days because that doesn't work. So driving user adoption with 40 to 50% accuracy of output is quite challenging. You need it to be 100% right the very first time. So we then brought it back into staging and continued to make that work and get the efficiency up to 80, 90% before bringing it to people. And then the last was, how do I judge business value? So the hypothetical idea was 500 people, maybe I'll hit 40, 50% efficiency. So I should save 250 people worth of effort. So when I put this up to our CFO, I said we could take off 250 people worth of effort. But you actually cannot, because what it does is you still need the human in the loop. You still need these people to go and verify what's being done because it's going to end customer. Yeah. So while effectively you have saved 250 people worth of effort, it doesn't add to the bottom line. This is now the realization is, okay, it's not going to save, it's going to save time. Maybe the time is better spent thinking about better competitive answers more than what the standard information that's come through this whole process. So that's the learning of going from a POC to MVP to production, user adoption, model change, data accuracy, all of these issues. But it's working now and we continue to evolve and learn.
Okay, yeah. We have a few minutes before the session ends, so I want to open it up to the audience and see if we have any questions from the audience to our panelists. We got a question over here. Do we have a mic in the room? No, maybe you can introduce yourself and ask the question.
Hi, Sumit. You mentioned some of the world traits of so particularly.
Thank you.
Hey, Sumit. Atul here from Verizon. You mentioned particularly about the workflow kind of. So when these GenAI tools are it's for any organization, when it is going, there is a large of the resources which are not either adapted or kind of, as you mentioned, scared, right? So how to break that barrier? It's a more of a human barrier than technology barrier. So how organizations lay out a long-term strategic plan to make sure it becomes more adaptive, welcome change, and the whole organization levels up instead of trying to become pockets of advancement and pocket of resistance.
And We had a few more things planned, guys. We talked about technology. We were going to talk about process and people, but we're running against time. This was exactly the thing that we want to cover. Let's have a real talk. The reality is this is still a very nascent technology. Okay, just anybody who says that they have figured out how to scale is clearly hasn't gone through the journey. As we go through this journey, a lot of things we will learn and adapt. New technologies are going to come in, so a lot of things are going to happen. Specifically, and the best practices are going to evolve as well. Most important for all of us is, I think few things we know. There's a good practice to have a center of excellence. And right before this, I was discussing with some of other practitioners as well. The practitioners or the people who are distributed, all the development team who are working on it, we all have to become the owners of this thing about accuracy. We have to learn the tricks of the trade. How do we keep improving the accuracy? You need to be an expert on how to create RAG, add your own data sets, how to create the knowledge graph of your knowledge graph is nothing but, how the organization works, right? So you have to capture that. The agent framework has a lot of answers to improve accuracy as well. So we have to become really good at, practicing some of these, principles, and then the advancements on the LLMs will keep coming. The cost of compute is going to keep coming down. Eventually this will all settle down. This is the initial couple of years of internet. I mean, all the protocols and all the best practices, we didn't have microservices in 2001. So this is the initial phase. A lot of things are going to evolve, but it will all require us to be really deep in that deep end, right? Figuring out what it is, and then adopting some best practices. So we are making the most of it. I don't think the whole thing has been figured out, and what's the end state of how this should work best.
Yeah, we've got another question in the center here. Fran? Thank you.
Hi, Sumit and team. My question is about how will you use AI to solve real network issues, right? So do you see a future where maybe operators will share their data anonymously so that the AIs could be trained on it? So then you can automatically fix or do the real self-healing things that we talk about, and maybe beyond just Verizon, but maybe collaboration with AT&T and others. Do you see a future where that would be possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, in the initial use cases, we're all focused around knowledge management, things in the software development lifecycle. How do we, I mean, for those of you who live and breathe OSS, there is tons of stuff, right? We do performance management. There are customer tickets coming in. You have issues in the network. You have hard down. We have a philosophy that we use, which is SON, a self-optimizing network. These are not new concepts, but you have a new tool in your toolbox. And the difficult part is a lot of the work that we do is all numerical data. It's not textual to a large extent. So you can't really apply GenAI in the same principles or the same way that you apply there. But you can convert it. You can leverage the principles of GenAI. You can use the knowledge graph. You can use the agentic model. So there are a lot of framework around GenAI, which you can translate and create your own. It might not be an LLM, it might be an SLM, that you're hosting on your own, leveraging a knowledge graph. And so it will be an implementation of all of those. Again, we are in the experimental phase. We haven't cracked it yet, but those are the kinds of things that you will be able to do. But rest assured, all the SON, performance management, fault management, service assurance, all those domains are ripe for disruption using the technologies in this area. It's going to take a little bit of more time.
I think the first, since I cover the globe also, you asked about operators sharing knowledge and information. The first Telco Alliance is live for the last year, as you know, in Asia and Europe, with Sky, Etisalat, Deutsche Telekom, Singtel joining together to share information and build a common model. So I think we may see more operator alliances, and the specific use of that is going to be on the network operations and troubleshooting when that happens.
I just want to pick up on the collaboration side, because you and I talked, Sumit, before the session, where you felt probably a little more comfortable maybe trying to collaborate with your colleagues outside of the U.S. In other regions. I'm just wondering, like, how you see the collaboration even in market, so to help solve some of these complex problems, but to do it successfully. I mean, we've seen industry initiatives, but they haven't been successful. Is this an opportunity to maybe collaborate? And to the question that we just had, share information with, but still at the same time being in a competitive market.
Okay, so this is not a call for a Catalyst program, but it seems like a perfect Catalyst program, and especially areas that we don't compete. We are pushing the boundaries on it, and especially around this troubleshooting area that we were just talking about. So it's a great opportunity. Like we are all trying to solve similar problems, right? Same problems. Technologies are the same. The problems are the same. So why reinvent it? Especially when the areas that we don't compete, it's always good to do it together.
Other question. We got another question in the middle back here, Fran.
Thank you. I don't want to stand and block everybody from seeing you guys. So myself, I'm Sumu Balachandran from Boost Mobile, formerly Dish. So we are investing and trying to innovate in this space as much. And definitely, I do agree that the knowledge management space is possibly the right place to get this technology in. But then I want to understand from your experience, how prescriptive has GenAI been in this versus being a very smart, intelligent search engine, right? We're talking about desperate different sources coming together, right? And I want it to be as technology agnostic as it can be in terms of cloud services versus my RAN technology versus my core technology versus my network engineering. All of this documentation from various different sources are procured. My solutions, my RCAs are put together. My defect informations are pulled in. But then at the end of the day, I want to be in a situation where my frontline resources don't have to be specialists, could be generalists who understand telecom enough to be able to use this capability. So I'm not looking to cut people here or reduce headcount. I want to make them smarter. But where I am not seeing immediate returns, and I think we need to invest more time, is the prescription versus smart searching. So what have you guys seen in that space, right? Has it become generative for you, wherein something that has not been figured out before using the same documentation is now being prescribed?
I can start, and then the team can add. So, taking specific example, the one that I already gave, we have landlords, we have leases from the landlord. The traditional approach was that, you OCR it, you kind of recognize all the characters, and then pattern matching, semantic matching, you're figuring out, okay, what exactly was in the lease. So the next time if there is like a big storm, who is liable to fix the cell site? Is it is it the carrier, or is it the landlord? We've been doing this for like years, and we would take it few contracts in 1 year, few landlords, but we were able to do like in one shot all landlords, because now I don't have to do custom OCR based on individual templates. I'm just kind of giving a small example. You can kind of expand and see. In general, the way that GenAI manages and understands, right, what's written in the context is much superior than the old technology of context matching, semantic matching. You're kind of looking at in the relationship. The ecosystem around it has evolved as well, so you can make use of it a whole lot more. We are seeing similar use cases in the Copilot that I mentioned. You can rule out, so troubleshooting, for example, you can rule out a few things by design. Is that okay? Don't bother looking at these things. So it can significantly reduce the cognitive overload on the frontline employees that you talked about, and then only target those things that they should be focusing on. So instead of looking for everything, now you're kind of focusing and pointing, guiding the frontline employees to just focus on a few things. So it can reduce cognitive overload, increase the automation, But at the end of the day, it just gives you a different tool to do the same thing. It's not doing something new by itself.
A couple things that I'll add on that I'm seeing is just how quickly the context windows or the amount of information that you can put into the models is increasing. I believe when our initial models came out, they were sub 50K, then it was 100, now it's 200. We've talked about 500 with Cloud for Enterprise. And so there's just so much more information that you can put into the models now. And as we keep making progress on RAG and we keep having innovations like contextual retrieval, it'll just be easier to find that information. You can put in more information, you can find it easier, and that's just going to make it easier to do some type of natural language query to find your backend data.
Are we talking about a scenario wherein the cell site information and the antenna vendor information, you're talking about multiple different verticals. That's where the power is there, right? I of course understand that we are able to reduce a lot of cognitive load on the front end. But if I go on ChatGPT, there is a prescription available to a problem I put together, right? That's what I want to see in this as an output. And as we are, if I was there, I probably would be giving the same answers like you guys are. But I wanted to get from your experience, if you have seen something prescriptive come out of these models at this point. Because I'm starting to believe there needs to be new models created, which are very telco specific, wherein we'll start seeing more prescriptive nature coming into the picture. And that, the more generalistic these models are, I'm worried.
Yeah.
If
You think the models are too generic.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I was answering, the lady in front of you. Troubleshooting requires you to have your own knowledge graph, which is specific to telecom. Like how is the cell site constructed? It has a radio, it has antenna, it has backhaul, it has core network. So it will have its own knowledge graph, and then the implementation will be less textual and more data centric. So it will evolve. Again, we are doing some experimental work on it right now. It's not. I'm sure companies will come out and some internal work will happen as well to create not a large language model, but a small language model, which is kind of covering that particular universe. So there is more work to done, but rest assured the work is continuing.
Yeah.
Is happening in that direction.
Thank you everyone for your participation. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I want to, so we can take questions one-on-one after the session, but I do want to thank our guest. Let's give him a round of applause and enjoy the rest of the event.